I'm very excited that this panel has made it out of the group chat. I want to start by saying, on a lighter note, the relationship that Pakistanis have with journalists is a lot like the relationship Pakistanis have with their cricketers. We love them when things are going well, and we love to hate them when things are not going well. But these three brilliant women and what they do in terms of storytelling is incredibly important for us today, because we're all here because at some level we care deeply about the Pakistani-American story, where it comes from, where it is today, and where it's going to go. And our collective hypothesis, from what I see in this room today and the conversations we've been having, is that we've built up affluence as a community, but we still have a long way to go to build up influence. And that's what this panel is about, which is, how do we nurture influence by nurturing brilliant storytellers and journalists from our community and get our stories out there? So with that said, I'm going to move to the first question. And the first question is, journalism and storytelling is not a traditional career path. Given our model minority fetish to sort of be doctors, engineers, or bankers. I remember I met this one 8-year-old kid in New York City, Pakistani-American kid, and I'm like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he's like, I want to buy distressed assets, turn them around, and sell them for a profit. And I'm like, how old are you, buddy? So sort of this is where sort of the community is. But you three were like, I'm not going to pick up the stethoscope. I'm not going to pick up the Excel sheet. I'm not going to pick up the legal brief. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I'm going to pick up the pen. How hard was that conversation at home? Was it hard? And what made you hold your line?
I'm really lucky that I'm one of 4 and I'm the baby, and my parents already had 3 doctors. So I think I had a much easier path to be like, you already got 3, I can go do my own thing. But I didn't realize it was a viable career for me, honestly, and because it's not talked about in these circles. So I think I was able to explain the impact that I'm able to make in a community through words, through video, which is a different impact than my siblings make. But I think I was able to, as long as they were just like, as long as you're successful and you enjoy what you do, and they really saw that I love what I do, and that made it a lot easier.
Right. 3 doctors makes it easier. What was your story?
I don't have a dramatic story. My parents were very understanding. And I would give my mom that credit because she took a very unconventional route. She's a day trader, so she is not a very traditional woman when it comes to that. But if I had to give advice to someone who has traditional parents, I would say, phrase the narrative towards more sustainability and more like, our parents, South Asian parents, don't look for passion. They look for more stability. So phrase it towards more stability. Tell your parents that, journalism does have a stable income. It has a stable journey. And then bring passion, be like, I think if I'm successful in journalism, I can get more promotions. I can have more of a stable job trajectory. So I would say that would be my advice to anyone.
Okay. The parents in this room can close their ears, but journalism has a stable income is fake news, but we will come to that later. Rozina, would love to hear your point of view.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I just want to say really quickly, you mentioned storytelling is not usually a common career. I would like to say that storytelling is really common among Pakistanis. Like, Pakistanis love telling stories. And whether it's like at a dawat or just, WhatsApp group. And I probably blame my parents for my love for storytelling. So when my parents, when I told my parents I wanted to be a journalist, again, I think it helped that I was the 3rd child out of 4 and there was already a doctor in the family. But also, I think they saw what it meant to be a journalist. They didn't know what it meant in a traditional career sort of way. And even I didn't, because we can get into this as the panel goes on, but journalism has changed drastically, even over the last 10, 15 years. But I think what they did see was the work I was doing did have an impact.
That's amazing. And it's so true that Pakistanis as a culture, we love telling stories. I remember in the 90s when I was growing up in Karachi, there were all sorts of things happening in Karachi. And every day I would come from the van and tell my dadi all kinds of stories. And half the time I would make up stories. So one time, my van driver, school driver, he came to my dadi and he's like, I heard that your son, diffused a bomb behind the train station behind your house. And my dadi like, what are you saying? And he's like, yeah, Bilal told us there was a bomb scare and his dad went and cured that. So part of the storytelling bug, like even for me, I remember, even though I used to make up stories, now I make up less stories, but that comes from the fact that it's so natural for us. But you have seen the most incredible story in New York City, which is the rise of Zoran Mamdani. You had the front row seat to covering the political rise of Zoran. What was that like, particularly with somebody with your identity, and how sort of that played? Tell us that story.
So I was at that time, as I was covering the campaign trail, I was actually our executive political producer. So I really had a hand. And I mean, New York One is a very traditional media. It's linear, it's TV, it's cable. Yes, we have Instagram and we have social and YouTube, but at the heart of it, we have a bunch of reporters who are, who are out in the field every single day. And as a political producer, I was on top of the campaign trail every single day. And it was historic. I mean, how could it not be historic to view someone who has South Asian roots, is Muslim, and owns his Muslim identity, isn't she on top of that? So you have all of these different factors on the campaign trail. And Rozina wrote like a wonderful article talking about the Islamophobia that he faced. And it became a national story, of course, but on the local level, and that's what I can speak to as a New Yorker who's living in the city where he is our mayor now, it's also just hits on all the issues that need to be covered within our communities. Housing is still an issue within the South Asian community. The economy, cost of living in general, education, where people are sending their kids to school. Are the schools in Little Pakistan and Coney Island, like, are they happy with those schools? Are they getting good education? All of these transit, are people who are living there, are they coming into Manhattan for their jobs? How are their commutes? All these issues are very important. So I think really leaning into those issues and what he was bringing to the conversation was important. But we also saw he did a video in Urdu. We saw that he did a video in Bangla, and he was reaching out to these communities. And I think as journalism as a whole, it's, oh, wow, we are seen. We are seen as people versus being hidden on like page 10 of maybe a newspaper. But we were able to put a face to that, and being in the actual newsroom where these editorial decisions are being made, I could explain what certain references actually meant, or why this was important, or what his frame of mind may be as he's pushing some sort of conversation. So being able to explain that and push that is really important, because it would show up on TV and we would be like, oh, look at how like well-read these folks are. Like, they know what the issues are within our own communities. And then just on a very lighter note, just on election night, right? He ended his night on like a famous Bollywood song, and I had a different producer in the control room who was South Asian, immediately knew what the song was, told the anchor, and our anchor, Earl Lewis, was like, oh, that was this song, and look at that. And that's how he ended his night. And that little bit, it seems so minor, but that little bit of a reference just opens up the seas towards diversity and showing that we're human, and that there's representation out there.
I really want to say this is perhaps the most profound point that's been made so far. And I want to underscore this, like, we need 100 Mariyas in newsrooms across this country, because that is the nuance that can be provided. Oftentimes you look at Zoran's rise and you're like, oh, this happened overnight, but it's actually built on hundreds and thousands of people like Mariya, like all the people in this room who are building community and building nuance and being able to explain that to a wider audience. So this kind of storytelling and being in that newsroom while this is happening is incredible. Anoussa, I want to come to you. You have written sort of articles on the first school for transgender students in Pakistan. You've written about the plight of women under the Afghan Taliban. Do you feel a responsibility because of your identity to cover stories like this? And how do you sort of view the intersection of journalism and advocacy, and how do you sort of navigate that? Is it a burden for you to be able to cover stories only in your identity, or would you challenge that framing?
I would say I do feel a sense of responsibility, especially because I come from Pakistan, where women are only like 24% of women make the workforce. So I do feel a sense of responsibility, especially when it comes to minorities, such as the transgender community in Pakistan. I do feel a sense of responsibility for them. And I also feel a sense of responsibility for the Afghan women because there aren't a lot of representation when it comes to Afghan women in journalism. So I do feel a sense of responsibility for them as well. And when it comes to journalism and advocacy, I actually don't see them as intertwined. I see them as separate. I think journalism can be a means to advocacy, but if you are making a direct narrative towards advocacy, I feel like it could be unethical because I feel like if you're only writing for advocacy purpose, then you can make the narrative a little bit more stronger or lighter when you want to make more of an advocacy approach than just a narrative approach. So I would say advocacy and journalism are two different things, but they could be a means to each other.
Thank you for sharing that. Rozina, I want to come to you. You really go for it in terms of the topics that you report on. So you write about Islamophobia, you write about the war on terror, you're writing a book on Islamophobia that's coming out in August, which everybody should get. What's the weight of reporting on your own community? The emotional weight that it takes on you, particularly when the reporting is hard, when the subject matter is hard. How do you navigate it when you write on topics that impact our community the way that they do?
Yeah, for a long time, it didn't impact me. And I think just having a lens of a reporter really helps to have a distance and kind of, come to a story as an investigator rather than through an emotional heft. But after years and years of doing this, it does add up. And I remember doing a story that actually was really difficult emotionally for me to do. The reason it didn't paralyze me is, first and foremost, is that whatever they're going through, who I'm writing about, is a lot worse than what I've gone through. There's no comparison. And second of all, it does feel like what I can do for them at the very least is actually tell their story. I don't take lightly at all that people talk to me. I'm a journalist. I love when people talk to me, but I know that I'm not entitled to anyone's story. And so I really, really am, I don't take for granted that when people sit down for hours and share really personal, intense details, it's really important that I don't let my feelings get in the way of the work.
That's really interesting. And, it's sort of almost a clinical separation in terms of your own feelings. That's fascinating. I want to maybe then ask you about the other side of the coin, which is once your reporting comes out, the Pakistani-American community is famously opinionated about itself and about any reporting that comes on it. And that's because we've grown up on a steady diet of GO and ARY. I remember there was this time I was at Columbia Journalism School when Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan. And they were like, CBS needed like an intern who could speak Urdu. So they're like, you go and go to CBS. And so I showed up at CBS and they're like, we want you to watch Pakistani news channels and tell us what they're saying. So GO was playing the Raids movie. They made up a movie with James Bond music saying absolutely nothing. And they're like, what is the TV channel saying? And I'm like, they're playing James Bond music. They're just making up random visuals. It makes no sense. But that was sort of the quality reporting that we had. But the Pakistani-American community is extremely opinionated about what sort of comes their way. What has been the reaction of the Pakistani-American community to your reporting? Is it support? Is it silence? Is it indifference? Is it like, how do they react to the meaty topics that you talk to? And Rozina, I want to ask you sort of this question.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't, and this has kind of been a deliberate choice. I haven't covered Pakistan itself a lot at all. And when I have, actually, it's been largely supportive. There might be some critics on Twitter, as they normally are. But for the most part, it's fine. thing that has been frustrating is when I have tried to cover, Pakistani-American diaspora in a certain way, or if there's a story I've wanted to follow, the most common response I'll get is silence. And I understand. I think we as a community are still not comfortable with talking to journalists. But I do think that does need some shifting.
Absolutely. And I think it's a lot of the session that we just had with Malik Sarwar, for example, right before this, I think it underscores the importance of being able to speak up and tell your story. So I want to come to you with the same question, because you write a lot of provocative pieces. What's the reaction of the Pakistani-American community to your work?
All three. So I would say pride. I got a lot of pride from the Shia community when I wrote about temporary marriages in Iraq, because it's an issue that not a lot of people talk about, especially within the Shia community. So I did get a lot of praise for that. I got praise from transgender NGOs in Pakistan for my transgender rights piece, but I did get a lot of hate from right-wing organizations in Pakistan for writing about the transgender community. But I've also received a lot of criticism for writing about bachabazi also in Pakistan. I had my cousin said this to me. He's like, "You're making Pakistan look bad in the international sphere." But as a journalist, I'm not writing for the positives or negatives of Pakistan. I'm writing just a narrative that I'm seeing and true stories that I'm seeing. So I've faced all in silence. I've actually faced a lot of that in Pakistan, especially talking about taboo topics that I wanted to talk about, like sex education in Pakistan or blasphemy laws in Pakistan. So I have faced all three of that. And I think as a journalist, I've just navigated by just being a storyteller, telling it, whether it's right, whether it's a positive narrative or negative narrative. So I think that would be one of my suggestions.
Yeah, I think that's also a very important point to say, which is journalists really represent a mirror to society. So if you don't like what you see in the mirror, or you don't like what you see on the weighing scale, it's not the weighing scale's fault. Sometimes it's just sort of projecting backwards what you're projecting forward. Mariya, I'm going to switch it up for you. APF is an organization, an institution that's operating at the intersection of sort of civic engagement and sort of bringing the Pakistani-American community together. How do you think an organization like APF could help storytellers like yourself in the work that you do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this is probably a good first step, but also we have 3 women up here. That's amazing within itself.
Can we have a round of applause for that?
I think the destigmatization of the whole field and the fact that it is a viable career option, the fact that you can do really good work is really important. So I think this is such a great start, but I think grants, awards for good work, or if you have some sort of submission of here are things that people have written about Pakistan or done about Pakistan or the South Asian community, and we want to give someone an award for these little recognitions, help make that shift in the community as well. But it's a great starting point for sure.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And I hope some of the board members here also sort of heard of that. I want to come to my last question before we wrap up. And the last question is, if there is a young woman in this room who wants to become a journalist or a storyteller, what advice would you have for her? Maybe I can begin with Rozina, and then we can go here.
Yeah, I would say really know why you want to be a journalist. And this is not, and I don't mean why you want to be a writer or be, a TV anchor, but what I mean is know why you want to do this work, because it is hard work. And we are doing it in a time when the media industry really is crumbling. So, just to echo Mariya, I do think that what is needed is a lot of support for journalists. And I think for any young woman who wants to be a journalist, I would say just have that conviction of your work and what you want to do, because that'll go a long way through the tough times.
True words. Anoussa, love your thoughts.
My biggest advice would be don't be scared of rejection, because the way I started journalism wasn't working for a news organization. It was just reaching out to publications. And the first 37 publications I reached out to rejected my proposal. The 38 said yes. But, I learned from every rejection I got. So do not be scared of rejection. Journalism, you'll face a lot of rejection in. It's part of the game. So, keep applying. Don't be scared. Don't be scared to reach out, and don't be afraid of rejection.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to jump off of Rozina said also, just that it's not glamorous work. I think people look at, oh, you could be a TV anchor, you could be on TV, and now you could be a content creator and you could have this whole following. But all this stuff is actually really hard. I think having the right intention of why you're doing what you're doing really does make that path a lot clearer.
Absolutely. And that's so true in terms of also the diversity of what you can do within journalism and storytelling and sort of influence. I do want to give a shout out to Rida, who's in this room. So she's not on this stage. She should be on this stage, but she is a phenomenal content creator and storyteller from within the Pakistani-American community. And there is a diversity of how you tell our story. It's not just within the context of journalism. There are many different ways, and she represents sort of our identity and our history and culture from a Pakistani-American perspective in a really unique way. So there are many different ways of doing it. Yes, Rida, would you like to stand up so that we can give you a round of applause? So I just wanted to call that out as well. So now to wrap it up, I think as we sort of summarize all of this, if we want to build up our influence as a community, we need to nurture more storytellers, but we also need to nurture more stories. There's an axiom in news when you ask, like, what is news? When a dog bites a man, it's not news, but when a man bites a dog, it's news. We need more Pakistani men to bite dogs. No, but we need Pakistani people, Pakistani Americans to do more interesting things. And we need you to come and share those stories with us. So if you have a story that you want to tell, please tell us. I host a podcast called Pehchan, Extraordinary Pakistani-American Stories. It's what I do. I want to tell Pakistani-American stories. So please go out there, do interesting things, and then come and tell the storytellers. And that's how you build influence within a community in different ways. So thank you all. I want to thank this brilliant group of women. And I'm so proud that it's a group of women who sort of have done incredible trailblazing work within the journalism space on behalf of our community. So thank you on behalf of our community for the incredible work you've done and for inspiring everybody in this room. Thanks.